The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, O Lord.
That very day, the first day of the week, two of Jesus' disciples were going to a village 7 miles from Jerusalem called Emmaus, and they were conversing about all the things that had occurred. And it happened while they were conversing and debating, Jesus himself drew near and walked with them. But their eyes were prevented from recognizing him. He asked them, "What are you discussing as you walk along?" They stopped and looked downcast. One of them, Cleophas, said to him in reply, "Are you the only visitor to Jerusalem who does not know of the things that have taken place here in these days?" He replied, "What sort of things?" They said to him, "The things that happened to Jesus the Nazarene, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word, before God and all people, how our chief priests and rulers handed him over in a sentence of death and crucified him. But we were hoping that he would be the one to redeem Israel. And besides all this, it is now the 3rd day since this took place. Some women from our group, however, have astounded us. They were at the tomb early in the morning and did not find the body. They came back and reported that they had indeed seen a vision of angels who announced that he was alive. Then some of those who went to the tomb and found things just as the women had described, but him they did not see. And he said to them, 'Oh, how foolish you are! How slow of heart to believe all that the prophets spoke! Was it not necessary that the Christ should suffer these things and enter into his glory?' Then, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted for them what referred to him in all of the scriptures. As they approached the village to which they were going, he gave the impression that he was going on farther. But they urged him, 'Stay with us, for it is nearly evening and the day is almost over.' So he went in to stay with them. And it happened that while he was with them at table, he took bread and said the blessing, broke it, and gave it to them. With that, their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, but he vanished from their sight. Then they said to each other, 'Were not our hearts burning within us while he spoke to us on the way and opened the scripture to us?' So they set out at once and returned to Jerusalem, where they found gathered together the 11 and those with whom they were staying. The Lord has truly been raised and has appeared to Simon." Then the two recounted what had taken place on the way and how he had made known to them in the breaking of the bread. The Gospel of the Lord. You know, each year at Christmas and at Easter, we have various pageants where the scriptures are acted out. And I often look at this passage as one that would be wonderful to act out, for kids especially, because the emotion involved in this, the beginning with some very despondent people. Try to put yourself in the position of these two disciples of Jesus. They had been with him for some time, following him along, expecting great things from him. They had seen miracles and expected him to be the Redeemer of Israel. But yet, he was crucified and had died and was buried as far as they knew. They had heard what the women had said, but not seen it themselves. So this idea of the Redeemer of Israel apparently wasn't going to happen. So they were going out of Jerusalem. They were leaving Jerusalem. And along comes this man who they did not recognize and starts conversing with them. And initially, they thought he was a little strange. How could he possibly not know what had happened in Jerusalem over the last couple of days? And they tried to explain it to them, and then Jesus got a little upset. He said, "Don't you realize what just happened?" And then he took the scripture, the Old Testament from Moses through the prophets, what everyone had said, and began to explain it to them in a way that they understood. Each prophet along the way had prophesied something about Jesus and the need for suffering. And then finally, when they reach the inn and he agrees to spend some time with them, their eyes are opened in the breaking of the bread. And they have to rush back to Jerusalem to tell the other disciples. Now, I think that could make a pretty dramatic play with all kinds of smiles and frowns and everything else going on. But what does it have to do with us? Well, last year, during this scripture reading, Pope Francis said that each one of us has our own Emmaus moment. Each one of us in the course of our life has at least one, some people have many, where you find yourself wandering. You find yourself sad, despondent. You're disappointed about something. And somehow you encounter Christ. He probably doesn't walk along with you on a dusty old road, but there is an encounter of some kind. And in that encounter, your eyes are opened, and you're brought closer to the reality that he is, in fact, our Redeemer. Part of our problem these days is that we are so busy running from one end of the day to the other that we miss these encounters. They get by us. But when you think about it, these two disciples of Jesus had given up. They were going away from Jerusalem. They had been done. They washed their hands of the whole thing. But in that encounter with Jesus, their eyes were opened and they were turned around. And the first thing they did was go back to Jerusalem. The same thing is true of all of us. We often find ourselves wandering in the wrong direction, lost, misguided, alone. And somehow we encounter the joy of Easter with this Jesus character. And sometimes it's a small gesture, a pat on the back, a smile, a child's giggle, a wind, whatever. We all have opportunities for this. And these simple gestures, these encounters along the way, can turn us around and head us back in the right direction. The test for us, the real quest for us, is to quiet our lives to the point that we don't miss them. To leave time in our day to encounter Jesus. That's hard. We have people we walk next to every day of the week. We don't know their names. We encounter people all the time and have nothing to do with them. I had the opportunity to do some traveling last week and was wandering through airports with 14 people abreast, I swear. And I had no encounter with any of them. because I was on my cell phone and they were on their cell phone, or they were dragging their child or dragging their luggage or whatever. That's the way we live our lives. But if we can find some time, find some time to be with Christ and to acknowledge the encounter that he offers us, then we truly can turn ourselves around and head back to Jerusalem. We all have to have the confidence that we will have our Emmaus moments. Just have to open our eyes, or let our eyes be opened so that we don't miss them.